Pat, can you make me a co-host and read your chat?
Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, NMRA.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate it. Hope you check in very often with us and tell your friends about us. Before we start the show, I'd like to turn to Father Ron Walters for the prayer for our show. Father Walters?
Creator of the world, as modelers and makers, we recognize the intricacy and the beauty of our world. We thank you for the vision and the artistry you have given us. Continue to bless us with your creative spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father. We really appreciate all your help during our shows. I apologize for last week. We had a technical problem. We thought we had it solved at one point. Obviously, we didn't. We just are in the process now of replacing the bad video from last week with a good one from the Zoom side of this. The YouTube one was the bad one. We think that we have it fixed today. So far, it's working like it should. And I think everything is going to turn out very well for us. The build-alongs that we have on the show, pardon me, I'm trying. The first person who's supposed to be a presenter tonight says he doesn't have a link for the show, so I'm trying to fix him. I'll worry about him in a minute.
No, I'm here, Jim.
Oh, okay, fine. The build-alongs for our shows that are coming up are all on our website, so I won't go over those. We hope that you'll check with our website and look at what's coming up and when they're coming up and who's doing them and so forth, and particularly the discount the manufacturers are giving on each one of their kits, because that's very important, because both the manufacturer and the modelers who are building them live on the show, they're doing it to try to help you. And if you've been out of the hobby for a while or new to the hobby and haven't built a kit for a while or maybe never, this is an opportunity to really get some help along the way and not have to pay full price for the kit. So I hope that you're interested in them because both the manufacturer and the modeler that's doing the work on our show really would appreciate you participating with them. The next modeling lifestyle show that we have coming up is on July the 20th. That's featuring Dennis Brennan. Dennis is awfully well known in the three-rail modeling arena. But Dennis is a scale modeler other than, yes, he runs three-rail trains. while Lou Sassy is basically the main photographer that goes around the country and other places to do photography for Model Railroader magazine, Dennis is his counterpart for classic trains. He's got no telling how many layouts he's done around the country. And he recently published a book. And I read a couple of the chapters the other night. And the first chapter, I got to tell you, it's the most well-written, informative book that I've ever seen, and comments I've ever heard anybody make about how the three rail scale people. In other words, they're scale scenery, the structures are all scale, a lot of their cars are scale, the locomotives, the track are three rail. But the rest of their layouts are all scale, and how that started, and when that started, and when the NMRA accepted them as legitimate modelers into the NMRA in 1937, I had never read all of that before. So it was a real education for me, and I think you'll really enjoy it if you're interested in that kind of thing. But Dennis is going to be our guest on Modeling Lifestyle. He owns a company. He produces kits. He sells ballast and different kind of stones for modeling. And he's just a really nice guy. So that's going to be on July the 20th, and that's the next one that we have coming up. So with that said, we have on June the 21st, Chris Course is the host of our My Bill segments, and the next one coming up is June the 21st. So Chris, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Jim, I have that as the 28th.
Hold on. You want to talk about it, and I'll check to see which one.
Sure. Yep. All right. All right. Good night, everybody, or good evening, I should say. The next My Build is the 28th, I believe. The June challenge is water. We would like to see your boats, bridges, rivers, lakes, ponds, beaches, or however you can stretch it so that it encompasses somehow some form of something that's dealing with water. It's a theme show. And then of course, back in when we go into July, that'll be back to a regular, basically a free-for-all My Build. So anyway, if it's something you're working on, maybe something cool you found at a garage sale or whatever, and would like to share it or would like some more information about it, maybe you found something weird, you don't know what the world it is, and it pertains to this subject for this month. Just please bring it to our attention. And anyway, email me those photos, railrunner130@hotmail.com, and we'll take care of it. And if you have not if you have not shared photos with us in the past, also include a photo of yourself for the title card.
And it's the 21st, Chris, not the 28th.
Okay. All right. Simple fix.
Yep. So the next one coming up, then the My Bill will be on the 21st of June.
All right. I'll get the slide fixed.
Okay.
So it's back to you, Jim.
Thank you. Okay. Burr, are you here?
I am here.
Okay. First off, I'd like to introduce Burr Stewart, who is a fantastic modeler, and he's going to talk about his model railroad and some information about what he really enjoys about our hobby. So Burr, welcome. I really do appreciate you being with us this evening.
It's my pleasure. Let me see if I can share the screen.
There you go.
Are you seeing me? Let's do the slideshow. How about?
I'm not seeing it full screen. There you go.
Are you seeing it now?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to give you a very quick layout tour of a large layout that I've been building for 35 years. My name's Burr Stewart, and I'm going to basically take you through my modeling process rather than photos of each detailed scene. But by way of introduction, I just want to say this is me before I found out that I was very myopic and needed glasses. So I loved playing with trains, but I had to get real close up to them. And I've been playing with trains my whole life and just can't seem to stop. And just as an introduction, I have three very important quotes I want to share with you. One is from Kent Sullivan, who's a noted Northern Pacific historian. 95% of historical railroad photographs are about locomotives. And to me, the hobby really is about locomotives. And there's all kinds of other stuff that we do. But he found in his historical research that he could hardly ever find pictures of buildings or line side structures or bridges or anything. It was always photographs. The next thing that I always say is I never saw a train or a track switch that I didn't like, and I would call it beautiful, no matter how ugly it actually was. And Scott Calvert said to me one time, I started out designing my layout, and then at some point it started designing me. And I totally understood what he meant by that, because now I'm making all kinds of decisions that actually my layout is making, and I'm just sort of following its lead. So with that, we'll just start with how did I get going on this. In the early 70s, there was, of course, as you all know, a major merger. It's been called the most successful merger in United States business history. It was the merger of 4 railroads into the Burlington Northern that served the northwest corner of the country. And you're all familiar with this. And of course, it took them 7 years to repaint all the locomotives that they had from the Northern Pacific, the Great Northern, and the CB&Q. It took them 7 years. So being a locomotive junkie, I thought, well, what if I picked 1973 to model, and then I could have literally 5 times more locomotives than I would otherwise need, because I have to run all sorts of different what are called rainbow consists. And this is a good example: Northern Pacific, SP&S, and Great Northern, as well as, of course, the new BN paint. So you see my mischievous thinking all from the start. And this is the current layout. I just took this picture this morning, and you can see what I'm talking about. We have the passenger NP scheme. Here's the freight and Northern Pacific. This is a Milwaukee caboose because the Milwaukee interchanged with the Burlington Northern in Seattle. The old CB&Q paint. You see what I mean? You can go crazy with this stuff. And I have. So the first step is sort of how did I get interested in this? And I do a lot of rail fanning. I lived in Seattle since 1979, and I would go to the main yard there and see all these weird things like open doors on box cars. Where is this car going if the door is wide open? Obviously and empty. I saw a train one day like this, beautiful GP30 on the front, switch engine in the middle, which was dead in tow, I assume. And then, a caboose with a big P. Well, what does a big P mean? There's just one question after another. And here was another train I saw that day with a bunch of really weird looking cars. Well, I found out later that these were aircraft parts cars going to the Boeing 737 assembly plant in Renton, Washington. They called the train the Renton Rocket. And of course, now we model it on our railroad, and I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. I also noticed a bunch of rebar, which is used, of course, in construction. And I didn't know anything about why it would be there and where it was coming from. But I learned more recently that there is a steel mill in Seattle that in my era used to be owned by Bethlehem. And it makes rebar from scrap metal all over the country because the electricity prices are cheap here, and ships a lot of it by rail. And they certainly did in 1973. I also noticed a lot of grain cars, and I was wondering, were they full grain cars, empty grain cars? What was that all about? And of course, I had to show you this picture since a lot of you are from the East Coast. I took this picture myself, and there was a Conrail engine in it. And how could that make sense? Of course, I learned later it was a pool, locomotive and pool service. And that's a normal thing. But here's another example of a thing that got me curious, a switch engine with a big bump in it. And of course, if any of you are Union Pacific fans, you know that's a rebuilt engine. And they didn't do this rebuild until later in the 70s, but that's all right. And, another thing that I just wanted to mention is, as a modeler, am I modeling the cars here, or am I modeling the activity of loading and unloading the cars? And this is on the layout here. I have this same team track. And the answer, of course, as you all know, is both. We're modeling both the cars, the locomotives, the scenery, and the operations. This is the east extent of my layout, which represents, well, I like to call it Chicago, but it's actually the Skykomish Yard, which is part way up the mountains heading east from Seattle. And I just get a thrill every time I see this picture, thinking about how I'm looking at, whoops, oh, I guess I'll get to that later, but a lot of horsepower and a lot of rolling stock all ready to play with. So having, explained how I got interested and curious, now I'm going to talk about figuring it out. So the first thing, of course, is where are we? And we're in the northwest corner of the country of Washington State. And this yellow line is the Canadian border. And there was the Great Northern Railroad in red and the Northern Pacific in green. And after the merger, they were all one railroad. And then, of course, this orange color is the Milwaukee Road. And there were also some Union Pacific trackage rights that went up into Seattle. And of course, the next thing is, well, what can I build in my lifetime? And this is the track plan from the RMC article in January of 2008. And this shows the profile of the basement, and it's 30 feet from this side to this side, and it's about 33 feet from this side to this side, with the narrower part being about 24 feet wide. So that's the extent of the playground. And then there are these immovable furnaces and chimneys here. So I doodled around with track plans and concluded the best approach was to put a peninsula in the middle. Now, the most important story about track planning for this layout is that my wife and I really enjoyed playing ping pong, and so we had room in here for a ping pong table. And my wife insisted that we continue to be able to play ping pong. And we did for a while, and then I lifted the ping pong table leaves up and used it as a bulletin board for a while. And then eventually we got rid of it because as we got more and more complicated building the layout, we needed more and more operators, and the operators need room. So we now have a nice little small table in the middle here with some chairs, and we have all the supplies for managing the operating session, and people can walk around and have decent room. So even though I could have filled the entire room with bench work, I'm so glad that my wife insisted that we keep this ping pong table so that we would have the option in the future, because I certainly had no idea it would turn into such a monstrosity. So how do you make sense of all this? This is a simple diagram simply showing that I was going from the north to the south to the east, and there's even a car barge that goes to the west on the Milwaukee. And I adopted this color scheme for helping route traffic so that the cold colors go to the north, the blue as the color of ice. The hot colors of red, orange, and yellow are to the south. And of course, purple is the color of royalty. And the headquarters of the Burlington Northern was way back east in Minneapolis. So the, purple means east to us. And and so that was one way of making sense of it, to have a color scheme that people could learn and remember. I stole this idea from an OPSIG magazine. If you don't know that, that's the Operations Special Interest Group of the NMRA. And there was an article that somebody had come up with a simplified diagram. And at every station, I have the particular station in black in this center, so you can tell where you are on the schematic. And I can just tell people, for example, if they're switching here in the Balmer yard, which is the main yard in the layout, I can tell them you can send everything that's green and blue to the left and send everything that's a warmer color than that, just send it to the right. And that works for any of these stations and makes it much simpler. I also have a narrow gauge layout in the center of the room, which I'm not going to really talk about today other than to show you one picture of it. But that's a whole nother presentation we could do on narrow gauge. So then each car, now that we have a color scheme, gets a car card and a waybill. And I won't go into that if you don't know what it is, but this is the stack of car cards that belong to this set of cars. And the purple says they're supposed to go towards Minneapolis, which in this case is the gravel quarry in Snohomish. I'll point out here too, I also always have locomotive cards with showing which functions do which things on the locomotive. That's another subject we could talk about. Then each track gets a box for car cards and work surfaces for organizing things. There's a list of different jobs on what's called the call board. So when people come in, they can sign up for different jobs they want to do, whether it's being a yard master or a switch crew or a local crew or a pool crew. And then there are a whole bunch of train instructions. We don't generally run more than 10 or 15 trains in a few hour session, but we have a lot of trains we can run. This is just a close-up of the kinds of things in a train instruction. And these are the same size as the car card, so it's easy for everybody to keep their paperwork with them. I'm not sure there's anything else I want to say about this. I hope you don't mind me going so fast. I just want to show you a lot of fun things. So this is a sequence of trains that we try to run that I pretty much stole from a timetable from the Burlington Northern in 1973, but I did make a few adjustments just to make sure that it made sense on the model. And of course, Jim, as you know, that's a whole subject. We could have a panel on that sometime of when is modeling the prototype no more fun, is no longer fun. How do you balance between having fun on the layout because it's a model railroad and copying the prototype exactly? And I won't, say more about that right now, but that's a great subject because I'm in the process now of retreating from trying to do everything just like the prototype and making it more like, how can we make this as fun a time for everyone as possible?
Bert, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because it ties in, I think, to where you were going here. How long does it take for a person who wants to come to one of your operating sessions? How long does it take for them to break in, to have some idea about what they're doing?
Well, that's a good question. One could say years, right? But I think it's a good question. I think it takes at least a half an hour, 45 minutes. We had an operating session yesterday, and it didn't really get underway until about 35 minutes after the start time because people were just wandering around with a dazed look on their face, And eventually they all had their clipboards with their train instructions, and they had some idea of which way was north and that type of thing. So this just shows that we do put the information for them on the clipboard and give them a throttle. And physical and electrical reliability, of course, has also been the subject of many of your clinics on your channel. And I won't go into that now other than to say that I really overdid it with installing an awful lot of circuit breakers. But the great thing about that is anytime anybody makes a mistake and shorts out a block, it's only a little block that doesn't affect anyone else. And so the room full of 8 or 10 people continues going even though one person made a mistake with a switch. And of course, you do have to make a bit of space for a dispatcher's desk, which I never thought of in the beginning, but we did figure out a way to do it and rig up a couple of what's the word? Well, let's just say that one of the projects on my list is to improve the closed circuit TV. But this is the one hidden staging yard that goes towards Portland, Oregon, and this up here is the staging yard behind Dave Enger's head there. It's a camera train that I have aimed at the Sky Comish staging yard.
I got you.
And of course, we have to have people to run the railroad. So that's a whole nother modeling project, which is just to find people who are interested. And it hasn't been too hard. A lot of people have come to me, and it's partly because I have a YouTube channel now, and a lot of people are looking at my YouTube videos about the layout, and they are interested in coming to operate. You might recognize this guy here. This is Tony Thompson, who's the famous freight car guy from Berkeley, California. And he was here this year for the Sound Rails Operations Weekend, which is always a fun event. And I just wanted to show that I pretend to be organized, that this is a mind mapping software that I use to keep a list of all the things I need to do before an operating session. But in truth, I don't use it much anymore because I just leave the layout in a good shape, so it doesn't take too much preparation. My inner professor had to just share this one diagram with you that I think is pretty interesting, which is as modelers, we tend to think first about locomotives and then cars and track. And I happen to love all three of these things, and they're a lot of fun. And of course, you put them together into a train and you want to run it somewhere. So then you grudgingly start doing operations, because otherwise where are the trains going to go, right? But the way that a real railroad thinks is, who are the customers that are going to pay me money to keep this railroad running? And so they're much more focused on what does the customer need. If Boeing's making airplanes, do they need parts? Do they need them right now? Do we need to expedite and put that railroad parts car on the front of a passenger train so it gets to Boeing in time? You know, it's that kind of thing that they're thinking about as the customers. So the track locomotives, all this stuff is just a means to an end for them. And I'm continuing to try to think of how to sort of slowly shift the way we're running the railroad so that it feels like we care about these customers. And that would be a whole other presentation, because we've got some interesting and big customers on the layout, and we're thinking about how to make them a little more visible and have them participate in the discussions, if you will. And actually, I was talking to one guy the other day who has a friend who's an actor who loves to call in during the operating sessions and give somebody a hard time about how come such and such hasn't been delivered to them. And it lends a certain air to the thing when you have somebody on the phone who's demanding that you do something different than what you're doing. And I don't want to talk anymore about operations, but other than to show this picture, which is, I told you, this is a picture of the Renton rocket on my layout coming up from the Boeing plant in Renton. And it's got the empty Boeing parts cars. They call them tool cars on the railroad. And it also has some scrap left over from the manufacturing process. This gets sent back to Alcoa, Tennessee. So that'll have to go up to my purple staging yard, right, to get back east. But as important as this is the international passenger service to Vancouver, BC. So what's going to happen right here is the dispatcher is going to hold this train right here and let the passenger train come out of the coach yard and go to the passenger station and pick up the passengers and get going. So that's the kind of thing that happens when you're doing operations. I already showed you this, but I have to say, I just love locomotives. Have I said that already 3 times? I mean, this is 50,000 horsepower right in front of your eyes there. How about that? So this is the middle of an operating session, and this is the main yard. And just to illustrate how much fun and chaotic it can be, I just wanted to throw this picture in. This is the engine terminal, and you can see it's gotten so clogged that we had to take some locomotives off the track and just stick them on the bare dirt there. And what else can we see here that's kind of funny? Well, there's too much in here, obviously. That's the main thing. This is a switcher, so he's probably trying to pull these cars out, but he's not sure where to put them. And meanwhile, this train. Anyway, you got the picture. This is Don Morenzi. I don't know if any of you know Don, but he's got an absolutely gorgeous layout in the East Bay, San Francisco Bay Area. And he is quite an expert in mining of all kinds. And when he was here for one of the sound rails, I gave him the loaded unit coal train, and he was just in heaven. And this great smile on his face is one of my favorite photographs ever of the layout, because I knew how much he knew about mining and coal, and he was just in heaven. And of course, at the end of the operating session, 20 hours later, we have all cabooses facing us instead of locomotives, because the locomotives are on the other end heading towards Chicago. And this 20-hour thing is my main point, which is I had no idea when I started the layout that it would take 20 hours of continuous operation of 10 people to get everything done. So now we have 3 or 4 hour op sessions where we can have 4 or 5 of them in a row without any restaging because we haven't gotten the job done yet. But it's a lot of fun. Anyway, I just want to show you some more examples of copying from the prototype in my modeling. And do I have about 10 more minutes, Jim?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
So, and I already showed you the map of the area. Obviously, if I haven't said it already, I'm basically modeling from Tukwila up to Bellingham in the Seattle region. And so the water is on the left here. So that means south is always to the right and north is to the left. This is a simplified picture. I already showed you the color diagram. So I got some drawings from the Great Northern Railway Historical Society of the actual Interbay Yard in Seattle. And then I flipped it upside down and stuck it against the wall. And then I have my track plan for the main yard. So this is the same yard I showed you a picture of a minute ago being all clogged up. The layout of this yard is taken from the prototype track plan, although certainly condensed. I used to work at the airport for many years, and I would drive by the Lone Star cement plant in South Seattle, and I was always taken with the fact that it had 3 tracks loading cement, from this plant, and a 4th one going off to some other purposes on the other side. So I had to do that. So this is my 3 tracks with a cement silo and this 4th track going off to other purposes on the back. And so that's just, every time I see this, I get a big kick out of it because I know exactly what that looks like. And a lot of other people recognize it as soon as they see it. The Interbay Yard in Seattle has some great overpasses for train watching. And one day I was here and I thought, wait a minute, I have an SD9, I have a switcher. Why don't I stage this? So this is my staged version of the exact same situation, except I should have removed those logs from that gondola car. But anyway, I'm just saying you can really have fun modeling the prototype, not only laying out the tracks the right way, but actually copying a picture. And if you follow me at all on Facebook, one of the things that will happen to me is somebody will post a picture from 1973 of a train, and I'll run downstairs and see if I can find the same locomotives and then make a picture of it in HO scale, a copy of the same train that ran. In Interbay, there's a car repair shed 3 bays wide, so I did a little kit bashing to come up with that, a 3 bay wide car repair. And anyway, so that's another example. And it also has a fuel loading area with a tank, and I was able to copy that in the right place in the yard, and we supply the fuel to there. And then eventually we even got the tank built and put in place. And now we're having arguments about the tank because this is the color it is now, but back in 1973, it was a charcoal gray color. So we may have to actually take this out and spray paint it. There's another, I'm going to go really quick here. I can't tell you every story I want to, but I just want to mention this odd shaped cutout is actually a portal for the train that goes back, the old NP line that went across to Fremont. And so there's actually a switcher that takes some cars over to the South Lake Union area of Seattle that's back here behind this scenery. So that's one of the only examples I've ever seen of an oil tank with trains running right through the middle of it. This is a scene very close to my house where the ocean is just up against a hillside and the double track main line goes north to Everett and then back to you all in the East Coast. And it was one of the things I really wanted to model. So this is the scene on my layout with the same basic situation of lots of foliage, double track main line, and a seawall. I also noticed they had some really cool retaining walls made with old rail and ties, old ties. So just a great way to make a cheap retaining wall, and it's a very easy thing to do. If you got some wood ties stained dark and you've got some old rail, you just cut it up. I think I used some code 55 rail I had here so that it wouldn't look too big, but it looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So this, what's that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, this is an example of the same kind of thing up in Everett. There's a big hill. The city is up on top of it there. And they have a yard here called Bayside Yard. And I realized that if I could find the same car, we have modeling from the prototype. Here's the hill. And that's just another example. There's a very important Y called the Delta Y, where if you go to the right, you go to Chicago. If you go to the left, you go up to Vancouver, BC. And so I really wanted to have that. And this is my version. I couldn't quite do the bridge right. And then if you're ever in the Seattle area rail fanning, I encourage you to go to Mount Vernon and look for the Burlington Yard, because this is a 5-track yard on the prototype. And there is still a branch going off to the west. We're looking north here, branch to the west going to a couple of refineries. And then there was a branch east going up into the mountains to a limestone plant and some lumber mills. Anyway, this is my model of the same yard. And it's really fun because this works just the same way as the prototype. We have this track here for the refineries, and you can see it's full of oil tanks. And then over here, we have some fruit packing plants against the wall. And down at the end, there's the concrete branch where we get the cement out of. One of the mountains in the Cascade Range is called Mount Index. And I was able to somehow have my son paint this on the backdrop. I'm not this good a painter, but he was. So he took this photo and made the painting on the backdrop, which looks quite a bit like the real Mount Index.
Yeah.
And then there's also a famous rail fanning trestle on the BN main line near Stevens Pass. So I made one of these microengineering trestles to try to imitate this and put a couple of these on here. Now, the sticklers among you, if there are any, will point out that this is not a 1973 era car here, but that's all right. That's the photo I have. One of my model railroad friends and inspirations models the 1895 period, and he really loved this photograph. And so on his HO layout, he made an almost exact replica of it, which just took my breath away every time I saw it. And I just wanted to show you this because modeling from prototype photos and scenes is really fun. Whoops, sorry. Oh, I didn't realize I could advance with my... So another quick point is the more you learn about how the prototype railroad operated it, the more fun you can have. This is something called the train ship, which was a special train that went up to a barge service in Vancouver that took fresh produce to Alaska. And so twice a week, they would run this special reefer train. And so that's what we do on the layout. We get a bunch of reefers. It's a very high priority train on a schedule because that boat that went to Alaska was going to leave at a certain time. And that's something I would never know about except, doing research on how the prototype operated. Also, there was copper ore that came down to a smelter in Tacoma. And I absolutely love ore jennies. And I was dejected because I couldn't model that here in Seattle until I found out that they used to use ore jennies for that copper ore and back in the 70s. So we run lots of ore jennies here with a big smile on my face. I mentioned the Boeing plant. One of them is up near Everett, and it has a 5% grade. And in order to handle that, they had to rebuild some Jeeps with special oil sumps because it was so steep they didn't want the the engine to run out of oil pressure. So anyway, I went ahead and put the decals on here so that we would have number 1799. And this locomotive is the one that always handles the Boeing job up that 5% grade.
Huh.
I think I'm out of time. I just want to mention that in the 70s, the railroads started computerizing their car handling, and they used something that started out with the Southern Pacific Industrial Numbering System, and then Burlington Northern took it over as the Shippers Perpetual. And what they do is they have codes for every switch and zones, and they coded every waybill for these computer codes. So anyway, I set something like that up for the railroad. And just to show you an example, I have number 1822, means zone 18 and track 22. And then you can see I've got the switch labeled 1822, and then the car card for that car is also labeled 1822, right on this waybill. And I also have interchanges with the Milwaukee and the UP, and I won't talk about this. And the last thing, or the most recent thing we're doing is to start modeling the West Seattle Bethlehem Steel Mill. And this is just a stand-in for starters. We will be, when I get the switches in, we'll be shipping scrap in this side and taking the rebar out from this side. But eventually I plan to do a larger shelf with a closer replica of the West Seattle Mill, which is a fascinating subject in itself. And last, I just wanted to show that it's true that I do have a narrow gauge branch. There's no excuse for it. It's just a complete indulgence. But here, my theory is that the DNRGW from Colorado eventually in the 70s expanded all the way out to Everett in order to compete with the standard gauge railroads. And that was the 7th division. So this is the 7th division of the DRGW. It terminates here in Everett, but we send narrow gauge trains back towards Denver. And this is the farthest we get, which is somewhere in Idaho. And that's our east staging up here. And we have a town up here. But fortunately, this is at my eye level, and I'm 6'5", so nobody basically pays any attention to this. I just have it so I can play with narrow gauge equipment. And of course, we can't end without mentioning cabooses, can we? I mean, that's the other big advantage of 1973 is everybody was still required to have a caboose on their train. And they, of course, all had a bunch of different colors too. So I have at least 3 or 4 times more cabooses than a normal person would need, as well as locomotives. So anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. It only took me 35 years to get to this point. So don't be discouraged if you're just starting with a layout. You just keep at it. That's all I can say. And I have this YouTube channel called Much Fun with Trains. And I've got about 400 videos of all kinds of operations and models and different things we've been doing. And that has become also a very obsessive sub-hobby. So anyway, that's it. Do you have any questions? Do you have any time for questions? No?
Yeah. Anybody got any questions for Burr? Burr, I tell you, the thing that impresses me the most, I guess, is how true to the prototype you actually do your modeling. You know, I've had other people talk about prototypes and that kind of thing, but nobody that I'm aware of goes into the kind of depth and tries to create the realism that you do on your model railroad. I think it's wonderful.
Well, the key is to try to make friends with people who used to work on the railroad, because that's how I get a lot of information. You know, they say, oh, no, we didn't do it that way. We did it that way. I say, okay, fine. We'll do it that way then, if you say so. The big, as you know, the big advantage to proto-freelance modeling is you don't have to make stuff up yourself. You can just copy whatever other people tell you they did. You don't have to design anything.
Right. Well, listen, I'm going to be in contact with you because I do want you back. I'd love to be able to talk about when prototype stops being fun. I think that could be a great discussion. And
Yeah.
something that you don't normally hear people talk about, particularly if they're trying to be prototype modelers. So, Burr, thanks so very much for your time this evening. We really do appreciate it.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, now I'd like to introduce Bob Davidson. You all know Bob. He's been on the show many times before, but he's starting a new series this summer called Dollar Store Treasures. And I think this is going to be fascinating. So, Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Let me share the screen real quick. And this is just going to be a pretty quick visit every week. And I found that, and I mentioned it in some of my previous workshop episodes, that a lot of times I find stuff at the dollar stores, and it's pretty amazing some of the stuff you can get there. And at least, well, here in the States, it's now $1.25. Probably in Canada, it's $3, but there are still some great deals to be found there and some really interesting stuff. So, so with that, welcome to the first episode of Dollar Store Treasures. And look, whoa, we go wild with that. Everything that I'm finding actually comes, we have Dollar Tree stores all across the States, and that's where tonight's 2 items come from. Each week I'll just be showing a couple of items. So this is only going to be a couple of minute episode, but we'll get started. The first thing I found, and this was a real surprise to me, were these plant clips. If any of you recall, about a year, well, a little more than a year ago, when I did my session on my elevated railway, I talked about how I had found these, or was actually told about these little clamps by a model boat builder up in Maine. And what these are little clips that they use to attach plant stems when they want to have a stick or something to keep them straight. And this is kind of how I wound up using these. I was putting some walkways down on a curved section of railing. This was all hand-laid track. And at the time, I was buying them on Amazon, and I think I said I was getting 20 of them for like $7. Well, this now is you get 20 of them for $1.25. There's 10 of the large ones and 10 of the small ones. So that's a really great deal. And they're wonderful little clamps because they don't have a ton of pressure, but it's good for gluing and stuff like that. They don't crush anything, obviously, because they're made for plant stems. So really kind of a neat find. I think it's a seasonal find that you'll find now at the dollar store. So go visit, take a look. Really a useful little piece there for, like I say, for $1.25. The next thing I found, and through the summer, we'll be looking at a lot of things. And this is, take a walk when you go to the dollar store, go down to the makeup aisle. They have a lot of brushes, and this is a little powder brush that I just found. It appears to be a natural China bristle. Very soft, very well set in the ferrule. Didn't have any loose filaments in it. Here's kind of what it looks like. It's about 1 inch, and it's a perfect little brush for using with weathering powders or chalks. And again, it's $1. You can't go bad. So again, visit the makeup aisle there, where they have some, and I think I've mentioned before, there's all kinds of things you can find there with the nail polishes and stuff like that. So we'll be looking at a bunch of that. So those are the 2 items for this week, little clamps and this little brush. So go visit your dollar store. You really can find treasures there, and they'll work very well with your model railroads. So that's it for this week, Jim.
Well, Bob, thank you so very much. I really appreciate. I think this is going to be a great segment. I really do, because it's a great way to get some stuff and save a lot of money compared to what you might be able to get it for other places.
Absolutely. And, they have, well, you'll see there's such a wide range. I actually went out tonight or this afternoon, and for $5, I got everything that I need for the rest of this month's presentation. So it's, but yeah, there are some really good ways to use things. And, the thing is that so many times, so many items are out there that are being used for something else. But when it comes over into the model world, everyone thinks it's a specialized item, so they jack the price up on it. So with all due respect to all of our hobby store people out there, there are some deals to be found. So we'll see you next week.
Great. Thanks so much. Bob. Anybody have any questions for Bob?
Not a question, but I'll add another one. At the dollar store, I use buckets of super glue, lots of super glue. And I find the dollar store sells super glue substantially cheaper than
Right.
going to your favorite hobby store or hardware store.
Yeah, you can all kinds of adhesives, and actually, I'm going to do a week that'll just be on that. I today actually found Mod Podge at this dollar store at Dollar Tree for $1. So there's all kinds of stuff there.
Well, thanks again, Bob. We really do
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
Now I want to introduce another modeler that I'm really impressed with, Al Pugliese. Al, I've known Al for a while, and we talk occasionally. But Al is very, very good friends with Howard Zane, works with Howard on his layout and so forth, trying to get it up and running because it hasn't been run for a while because of the pandemic. But Al is really a good modeler, and I'm awfully pleased that he's got time for us this evening. He also has his own Zoom show, and I'll let him talk to you about that. But Al, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel, Al Pugliese Trains. Just jump on YouTube and then Al Pugliese, Pugliese Trains. If you type in Al Pug, like the pug dog, usually it populates to the website. But instead of showing my big, fat, ugly face here, why don't I just flip this around and just start giving you a walkthrough tour of the layout? And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. It's a 23 by 32 foot model railroad. It's freelance. It's loosely based in the late 1950s, mostly steam, but with some diesel. I like to model a little bit of Cass, West Virginia, or I should say there's a rendition of Cass, West Virginia. I've got some of Harry Clark's fabulous models. He was a mentor to me. If you go to my website and go into the playlist and look at Harry Clark, you'll see he was one of the greatest modelers, in my opinion, that I've ever met. Alan Keller did a video on him called Great Model Railroads. I believe it was volume 8. I'm not quite sure, but it was the Indian Creek Valley. And it was a 65 by 38 foot model railroad, all scratch built, B&O, HO scale, just incredible. So anyway, let me flip this camera around here and I'll start giving you a walkthrough, I guess. So bear with me. All right, here we go. I've got a big city here that's loosely based on George Celios's Franklin and South Manchester. I love George Celios's work. I've been following him ever since I was a teenager. And I've also known Howard ever since I was a teenager. So I wanted a big city on the layout, and I wanted it to kind of be similar to something you might see on the Franklin and South Manchester Railroad. Now, this is a work in progress. You'll see that the Bremerseltzer Tower is here. This is the city of Pugsburg. It's an iconic Baltimore structure. But hey, I'm a freelance, so I don't have any guilt trips about it. You can see there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The highways need to be done, the streets need to be done. The buildings right now are just being logically placed in different positions. I'm going to have to take up everything when I put in the roads and all of the sidewalks and all of the little details. I've got some large skyscrapers in the back. A lot of those are custom model railroads, CMR kits that have been either built up or kit bashed. This structure, this mock-up right here you see, is going to be a future passenger station. It's going to be based on the B&O station in Chicago. So it's going to be a smaller version of the B&O station in Chicago that's going to anchor the Pugsburg city. So I just like to kit bash. I like to do whimsical things. This hospital here is called Pug Hopkins. It's kind of similar to what, based loosely on John Hopkins. I wanted a grandiose like structure. So I kit bashed a bunch of Milwaukee railroad station kits from Walthers and came up with this thing. Just pan through the city here. This is a custom model railroads, the Severn apartment building. It's an actual prototype based in Baltimore. The kit from custom model railroads is about a quarter of this size. It's about 11 by 11 inches. This one's about 25 by 25 inches, which is a little bit more indicative of what the prototype is. So if you contact custom model railroads, they will sell you additional kits so you can kit bash. It's just a lot of interesting little things I've got here. This power plant was inspired by George Celios. It's a whimsical, actually, it's not a power plant. It is a water treatment facility. I'll pan out here again across the city. Again, it's a work in progress. So there's a lot that needs to be done on this. And pardon me, I have not put in the lights in the back of the city to get better lighting. When you zoom into the back of the city, I need to add some more lights back there so you can see what's going on. Do you have any questions?
I think it looks gorgeous.
Well,
the
let's
kits, are all of those kits are scratch built or what?
some are kits, some are kit bashed. For example, this chlorine plant, which I jokingly called the turd away, is a bunch of Walthers warehouse buildings that I kit bashed together. Like I said, this is 4 custom model railroads, Severn buildings kit bashed. This is a kit bashed version here. This was a Milwaukee station kit. This is a custom model railroads B&O headquarters with an add-on. These skyscrapers in the back are Bachmann Spectrum skyscrapers that I kit bashed. Now I'm going to pan into the sawmill area here. And I'm not quite sure how the zoom works on this. But this sawmill is the mill at Cass. Harry Clark built this sawmill over a 10-year period to go on display in Cass, West Virginia. And when he finished building it, after 10 years of working on it, they told him, well, gee whiz, we can't pick it up. You're going to have to bring it to us. We really don't have anywhere to put this. So I acquired it from him. And the log pond that you see here holds real water. Now, I don't have real water in it right now, but it'll hold about 7 or 8 gallons of water. And those logs will float because the logs have been treated in Thompson's water seal. So everything floats as far as the logs. This thing has been completely scratch built from the ground up. And I've got some buildings in the back there. I've got a dog food factory to the left. And I've got a Pugliese pulpwood factory right about in the middle there. I'll pan across here slowly.
Wow.
So even though this sawmill is Cass, West Virginia, again, I'm a freelance, so it's kind of mixed in with the city scene, the sawmill. I like to run steam. I like to run transition diesel. Let's pan across here. This sawmill model is about 3.5 feet wide by about 17 feet long. This is the planing mill here.
How long did it take him to build that?
Approximately 10 years.
10 years, geez.
And I read about it. I read about it in Model Railroader. And I was in the process of beginning to scratch build it. And I contacted him. This was before the internet. And he graciously invited me and my wife over his house. And I wanted to measure it. I wanted to photograph it. I wanted to take pictures of it because a lot of the prototype had burned down at Cass. And he had this thing tucked underneath his garage, underneath the layout room, with a plastic paint cloth over it. And I told him that if I acquire this, I'm going to build my entire railroad around it. So you want to talk about operations? I have a 2-track main line, and I have a logging point-to-point line. And the logging point-to-point line serves Cass, West Virginia, and serves this mill. And the logging line will pick up logs from the town of Winston, which is a fictional town, and it will bring the logs to be dumped at the log pond here. That's the end of the logging line. So I've got the main line and I've got a short line, logging line.
Jeez.
All right, so let's pan across here. And the flooring storage facilities, these are supposedly exact size. He had told me that he had measured all of these buildings, the ruins before they were tore down back in the 70s. He had about 10 pages of detailed notes on the measurements. And these are huge structures. I mean, what you're looking at here, let me see if I can give you an aerial view. The planing storage facility and the flooring storage facility here are about 30 inches by, oh God, 12 or 13 inches across. They're huge. And then I've got the lumber yard here. Give you.
Good God.
Now, a lot of people have said to me, prototypical, well,
You're breaking up, Al.
West Virginia. And in the book, they have some photographs of hopper cars, box cars, and they're dwarfed by the height of the lumber. I couldn't believe my pick, but I've got.
Al, you may be in a bad place in your room because you're breaking up awfully bad.
It's mainly your voice, Al.
So
You might be too far away from your mic. We lost your voice.
Al,
We've lost your voice.
He can't hear you.
I gather that. Al, can you hear me?
I think we've lost Al.
Yeah. He lost reception. He might come back.
Yeah, let's give him a few minutes. You know, I had Tom Yorke scheduled for this evening, and he had an emergency and couldn't be here tonight. and sent me an email a couple of hours before the show started. So he'll be back next week, but he couldn't be here. And the same for Mike Kylick. I had Mike scheduled for this evening, and I heard from him about an hour and a half before the show, and he apologized. He just can't make it this evening. He'll be back next week. So
Try again, Al. Your voice is breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
Can you
but you're-
guys hear me now?
yes,
All right, I was at that end of the room that we did that test last week, and that end of the room didn't work. So
Yeah.
I signed on. Let me see if I can switch the camera. All right, there we go.
Enlarge
Right.
it. There we go.
All right. It's the town of Cass. You can hear me okay now?
Yes.
yeah, yep.
All right.
Picture's not real good.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you other than the reception down here in the basement of the house is a challenge. I don't have a router down here. But Cass is about 7 feet deep up on a mountain. The trees are all hydrangea trees that Harry Clark taught me how to make out of wild hydrangea. Obviously, the houses in Cass, the stuff in Cass is scratch built. The picture a little better for you guys?
Yeah,
Not too bad.
All right. I'll just pan across here. You watch
Yeah.
my YouTube channel. I've got some stuff on the layout. I'm going to be talking about modeling Cass. I'm going to be talking about how I modeled Cass. My wife and I would go to Cass, for example, this hotel, the Cass Hotel. It's only half this hotel now. Evidently, I'm told that a arsonist burned down part of that hotel, but we measured it years ago. We would photograph these buildings and measure them. And I take artistic license. I've added some structures. I've got a Howard Zane design way in the back. Let me see if I can zoom in on it here. My zoom doesn't seem to be working
Well, we can see
on
it.
this. So I'm just going to leave things alone. All right, let's pan back out. Here's a Howard Zane design that I just built with Howard. These open lots are for additional structures.
We're losing your voice again.
That's what Virginia. Again, I don't know why my Zoom is working on this. Zoom doesn't want to work for some reason.
Maybe I
Can you guys
changed you.
can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
you're breaking up a little bit, Al.
All right. I'm moving back to the better part of the basement, so it should be a little bit
Yeah, that's better.
That's better.
easy to hear.
Yeah,
The company store you see here, my wife and I just went down and measured the company store. Took a bunch of pictures, and people thought we were crazy. What are you measuring the store for? Over here is my fiddle yard. You see the B&O fans. That is the Mount Royal station. I wish I could zoom in on it, but again, I don't know why my Zoom is not working. So I'll come around the other way and we'll take a look at it. All right, let's come around. Got the yard facilities back in here. All right, let's pan around here. Let me just cover this here. Come around. This is an area that's in progress. That's work in progress, I should say. Let me see if I can get some better lighting. It's a floor to ceiling. The lower levels got the point-to-point logging line. The upper levels, the main line. The bridge is still under construction. It's a Howard Zane design on the bridge he's helping me with, so that's under construction. There's going to be a big hotel here. This is going to be the Oakland Inn, and there's going to be a waterfall coming out of this hotel. This is what the hotel looks like. This is just a mock-up of the hotel that'll anchor this. If you come down, it's one of Doug Foscali's kits down at the bottom. I'll just come back up. Come in here. Got a lot of Craftsman kits. I've got a lot of scratch built stuff, but I've also got South River Model Works kits, Fine Scale Miniatures kits. I like a lot of Howard Zane's designs. I'm an apprentice with Howard, working with Howard, learning as much as I can from him. And this is my woman's jail. It's a whimsical structure. And there's my wife on a billboard flying through the air. My politically incorrect prison. All right, let's come around. And this is my car repair facility. Boy, I wish I could zoom in on this Mount Royal Station. The Mount Royal Station was done by Mark.
Try using two fingers and pinch in and pinch out.
I've tried a million times. It won't let me. All right. Yeah, it won't let me zoom. That station I've always loved. I've always had a love affair with that station. I know it's not prototypical to be at a base of a mountain, but it's my railroad. And Mark Bandy burned me the walls, and it's almost exact size in HO. It's a huge structure. It's about 24 inches tall, 140 feet. It's a long structure. It's a big building. Give you some inside shots here. Some of the detail. Yeah. Some more Fine Scale Miniatures kits, some of George's kits. I built some of these kits when I was a teenager. Now this is the engine house at Cass. This was completely scratch built. I got a set of plans from the West Virginia Logging Historical Society. And this building here is built full size. It's about 30 inches long, almost longer than 30 inches with the addendum shed on the side here. And it's lit up and it's got full detail. That's a work in progress. See some other Fine Scale Miniatures kits. So Jacob's Fuel. It's one of his kits. There's another one of his kits back here. That's the coaling, the old blue coal building. That is the Canadian National Coal Tower, Fine Scale Miniatures. I'll talk about the scenery real quick. Again, these are hydrangea trees. These were made from dried hydrangea weeds that I gathered over a 25-year period. Harry Clark taught me that's how he used it. He would tie them all together and use wax, melted crayons, to tie everything together. Now, I decided not to do that. I decided to use caulk instead. And there's a lot of real moss on the layout that is treated with glycerin. And this moss is, a lot of this moss is 20 years old. It has not molded and it is still soft to the touch. So I like using a lot of natural materials, and I learned that from Harry Clark. I also deploy a lot of what Howard Zane does too. Those guys they're my mentors in the hobby. I've been blessed to have them around to learn from. I have pictures of future sites for future structures. I'm going to pan around. This was something you might recognize from the Franklin in South Manchester. George Celios has a similar structure, and George gave me his blessing to make one. This is kit bashed out of a bunch of Hermanson Mill kits from Railway Design Models, which is now, I think, Rail Scale Models. And let's get some light real quick. Bear with me. All right. These absolute beautiful hotels up here, if I can somehow get up here to get a close up, are the Deer Park Inns. And it's not letting me zoom. I don't know why. Those were built by Harry. And I just wish I could zoom up and get a closer look for you. But without the zoom on the camera, I just can't do it. I've got other scenes here. Kit bashed. Got some scenes from Ellicott City, Maryland here that I've been working on. Got a large bridge Howard Zane has helped me with that I'm in the process of working on. It is a work in progress. I've got a model of the Wilkins Rogers facility in Ellicott City. Sits here. This was kit bashed out of a bunch of different Walthers kits. A lot of the Walthers kits, plus I think Italia Scale Models has these panels that you can buy and you can kit bash and put together and make a similar structure. So, any questions, Jim?
I tell you, I'm so impressed with the with what you've accomplished. One of the things that I like about your layout so much is that the buildings, some of the buildings that you have on your layout really are very powerful statements. They put your rolling stock in perspective. In a lot of layouts, the rolling stock seems to me to be the largest items on the layout. But on your layout, it's a lot of the structures are just huge, and that is so impressive, I think.
I mean, I do what I want. Some people it's not their cup of tea, but I'm a freelance and I'm not afraid to do what I like to do. And I'm gonna grab a step ladder here and see if I can get up here and get a closer look for you guys for these Deer Park Inns. Like I say, this camera I'm using right now has an incredible zoom on it, but for some reason, it is not working on this on this Zoom call. I cannot access Zoom. I mean,
Al?
you know, yeah.
That one church you showed right there,
Uh-huh.
is that a kit or is that one you scratch built?
That was, let me go ahead and I'm okay now. Let's go with the, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a Vollmer kit that I had weathered down. I'm in the process of messing with it. And this is, God, I still cannot, for some reason. I
Well, those-
cannot zoom in
Pretty
on
good
these.
view.
They're just gorgeous hotels. So that's just absolutely beautiful.
Harry Clark built those. The two things Harry Clark built the hotels and Harry Clark built the sawmill. I added on to the sawmill with the lumber yard. And, but Harry Clark built the sawmill and Harry Clark built these hotels. They are spectacular.
Yeah,
Hmm.
they're gorgeous.
You know.
Absolutely cool.
All right, let me get down off this ladder here. I'll be right back. Just give me a moment. All right, let's walk through. Take you into the next section.
How many
Okay.
square feet is that layout?
It's 20 by 32 feet. And this is again, this was based on a building on George Celios's layout.
Mhm.
And I kit bashed a bunch of Hermits and Mill kits into that. And this is another one of the old RDA models you can buy from Steve Riley at Rail Scale Models. Let's walk into the other section of the layout.
How do you build your rock surfaces?
These rock castings are Bragdon Enterprises that are made out of his two-part epoxy. They weigh practically nothing. You can make a 3 by 3 foot casting that weighs 6 ounces and it's indestructible. And you can backfill it with expandable foam. The problem is the resin is
Al, we're losing you
for
again.
a resin, but
Al,
it's what you
Al,
losing me.
Al,
Yeah.
we're losing your voice again.
All right. How about now, guys? Back?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah, if I go into that end of the room, I've got other stuff into that room. Let me walk over there and we might lose my voice, but if we've got a picture, let me take you in the back of that room and hopefully you'll be able to see it. So let me walk back there and I'll walk back and bear with the loss of communication for just a minute. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, this end of the room has got shoddy reception. All right, you guys should be able to hear me better now.
Yes.
Yes.
I just upgraded this house with Verizon Fios, and they sent me a router, and they claim this router that I paid a fortune for covers the entire house. It's terrible. Now, if you want to see this thing on YouTube, just get on my YouTube channel, Al Pugliese Trains, and you can go to my playlist, and I've got 8 or 9 videos on this layout that are very well done, and you can see every square inch. And then you can see what Howard Zane and I are doing, building. And if you see anything on the layout you want custom built, that's what I do. I like to custom build structures. All right. It's kind of hard to capture this mountain here, but again, if I go into this hotel, what I like to do is I like to make cardboard mock-ups to give me an idea of the size of the structure. And this is going to be essentially similar to how this structure is going to look once it's made. And it's going to be accessible by bus. The buses will come in, come up this road, and the buses will go through the tunnel, come out the backside of the hotel. And when the passengers are dropped off to the station, they can get on a bus, and they can take a bus that leaves from the back of this hotel. The road goes right up this mountain, comes out this porthole, up, and it goes on its way to the resort. And the prototype for that resort is the Oakland Inn. Now, obviously, it didn't have bus service, but again, it's a work in progress. Let's see if there's anything I can zoom in on. That's about it, unless you guys have some questions.
You enjoy the custom model business you're in?
What's that?
Do you enjoy building the custom models that you're in?
Yes. Yes.
You specialize mostly in city structures, Al, or anything?
Anything. I don't like trying to build an exact duplicate of something. I want a little bit of artistic license.
Yeah.
But yeah, we build all kinds of stuff. I build all kinds of stuff. But yeah, check out the YouTube channel. And you know, the layout is built to run trains through scenery. I'm not much of a operations kind of guy. I'm more into running the trains through scenery and you know, the scenic aspect of it, so to speak.
Well, you've got some beautiful structures, no question about it. Anybody have any questions for Al?
Yeah, Al, I'm
Yeah.
really impressed at the fact that you called yourself an apprentice. I knew Harry Clark also. And
Did
the fact that you called yourself an apprentice to Harry and Howard
Right.
impresses me. They were some very, well, Harry was an exceptional modeler, and he always shared everything that he could with anybody.
He was the nicest, one of the nicest human beings I ever met.
Amen. I agree with you 100%.
He became like an adopted granddad I never had. You know, when I first got married back in 1985, my wife had never seen a model railroad, a real model railroad. The first model railroad she saw was Harry Clark's. And I've got that magazine right here in front of me.
Right.
That's the model railroader, where I saw Harry Clark's layout and read in that model railroader that he had built that version of the millet cast.
Well, he was kind enough to give me a few castings of his coke oven.
Oh, that I was talking about that today with Howard. I was telling Howard that those coke ovens were absolutely incredibly.
They were fantastic. And
Yes.
I would break them up to show the abandoned coke ovens was outstanding.
Oh, they were incredible. He carved, I believe he carved those.
Yes, he did.
And you know, did you see the Mount Rushmore back there?
Yes.
He made those heads.
I'm going to have to talk to you on a one-on-one basis sometime, and I would love chewing the fat with you. I'm going to let this open for some of the other people to ask something.
So I went over his house one day. The first time I was overwhelmed by his layout and his generosity. The second time we went over there, after I acquired the mill, he started teaching me how he made wild hydrangea trees, how he used the moss, real moss, how he preserved the moss and glycerin, which I'll have on my channel. I'll be sharing.
I see a lot of his layout in yours.
and I'll tell you, when I saw those heads, he made, to my knowledge, he made 2 sets of those heads, one for his daughter and one extra set. And the set that went to his daughter, when I saw it, I fell to the floor. I said, I've got to figure out a way to put this on my model railroad. How the hell am I going to get away with this? So, what would it look like if it were in West Virginia instead of South Dakota? So I said, to hell with it. I'm going to plant it in the middle of West Virginia.
Well, as you said, you're freelancing it, and you do what you want.
And
I'm going to turn you loose. Thank you for talking.
Hey, man, I really appreciate it.
Hey, Paul. Paul, do you still have those coke ovens?
No, unfortunately, when my layout got torn down, they didn't get saved, and the molds the molds that I made from you, they dried out too badly to reuse.
Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. I was hoping you'd be able to show them on the show.
I'd love to, but unfortunately, that's all gone.
Okay.
I'll tell you, folks, I don't, go to Alan Keller, Great Model Railroads, and get the DVD, Harry Clark's Indian Creek Valley. It is spectacular. And Howard Zane, we also have DVDs. We sell a 2-hour DVD. You get on my channel, Al Pugliese Trains, there's information about it. It's 2 hours. It's done by Forrest Nace. It's pretty incredible. I've just been blessed with these people were my friends. I was a teenager when I met Howard, and Howard is just an incredible modeler, like Harry. And George Celios, when I was in junior high school, I fell in love with his kits and his work. And I said, man, I have got to have a city one day. It'll never be as good as his, but I just want a big city. So I said, to hell with it. I'm going to make Pugsburg City, and that's what I built.
I'll tell you, it's impressive. No question about it. Anybody have any more questions for Al?
Yeah. Hey, Al, it's Chris Course. We met at Howard Zane's a couple months ago. You were showing a little bit ago Ellicott City. You showed there was a church, and then there was a building that caught my eye to the right of it. What's the story behind that building?
Let's go back to it. Let me switch this camera here. let me see if I can figure this out. All right, here we go. Let me get my glasses on. All right. Can you see it?
Yep, yeah, it's the building on the right, the little, the house.
Falls Church in Ellicott City. The center.
Oh, yeah, next to the church is a house.
Yeah, it's just a parish house. You know, and what's interesting is I didn't have to really scratch build that. That was a DPM Woodland Scenics kit. And I added an extra story onto it. And it was a dead ringer for the parish offices of that.
Okay.
A dead ringer for it. And then down here, let me see if I can get closer since I can't get the zoom to work on this damn thing. That's a Bachman Spectrum Sears house. They had the exact same house up at the church. So I just modeled the entire, scratch built the entire complex. And this is coming down the street here. And yeah, it's a work in progress. I've got to put shingles back on the priest's house in the back. You know, it's a work in progress.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
The beautiful layout, Al.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Well, you guys, thanks a lot. I'll jump off. And if you want to check out the YouTube channel, again, it's Al Pugliese Trains. And hey, thanks for having me on, Jim.
Oh, no problem. And for everybody's information, Al will be back later this year. We've talked about 2 other appearances for Al. One to talk about some more of the things he's doing or will have done by that time to his railroad, and the other about Howard Zane, and Howard will join him, and they'll be talking about Howard's layout and how they're getting it back in shape for an operating session, because it hasn't been operated for a couple of years because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's taken a while and a lot of work for Al and some other guys that are friends of Howard's to bring it back to operating condition. So that'll be later this year, but Al will be back to talk about both of those subjects. So Al, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time this evening.
Hey, no problem. Thanks.
Well, that's our show this evening. I thought it would be a little longer than this, but when 2 people have problems and can't come, then that's that just cuts it a little shorter. So we have a great caboose for you this evening. And Phil, I'll turn it over to you, sir, for that. So that's our show this evening. Hope you enjoyed it. Most importantly, I hope you learned something. Till next week, happy modeling, and thank you so much for being here this evening.